Third and Jauan, third and De'Zhaun. Jennings visiting the Minnesota Vikings today. Maybe the ex-49er will have a new team soon. And De'Zhaun Stribling, the 49ers rookie, well, we can talk about the fit with San Francisco, which I think is going to slot right into Jauan's old spot, except that Jennings runs a 4.7. De'Zhaun Stribling runs a 4.36. We'd always wondered what Jauan Jennings would look like if he ran a faster 40-yard dash. And maybe the 49ers are going to get their answer with De'Zhaun Stribling, who's been all the talk around the NFL because of his draft positioning at number 33, despite the fact that subjective mock drafts had him going later. Well, here's a news flash for you. Those who are objective about this, those who watch tape like Greg Cosell, don't care where your mock drafts put De'Zhaun Stribling.
It doesn't matter to me what mock drafts say. They don't know what teams' draft boards look like. So in my world, I think mock drafts are totally irrelevant.
You know who else wouldn't care about mock drafts? Bill Walsh. Take a look at this from Bill Walsh's draft philosophy. He always told everyone it never matters where we pick them. Bill was driven crazy by round talk. He hated hearing a scout tell him a player was, for example, not a good second rounder, but a great third rounder. I feel that's exactly what people have been trying to say about De'Zhaun Stribling. Listen, the guy led 3 different college programs in receiving. He might be the first receiver to ever do that. The college game has changed so much with the transfer portal and with NIL. So the fact that De'Zhaun Stribling even played for 3 different schools is wild, but he led Washington State in receiving yards. He led Oklahoma State in receiving yards. And then he finally led Ole Miss in receiving yards. So the fact that he was able to change offenses 3 times and still be the top dog in each of those offenses says a whole heck of a lot, especially when you put on the tape.
You know, I went through different places, learned different offenses, and competed at a high level and been successful almost everywhere, right? So it's been a great journey. You know, it's really kind of prepped me for this moment right here.
So much of what we see from De'Zhaun Stribling on his Ole Miss tape, despite how impressive it is with the 7.3 yards after catch per attempt, which is better than Omar Cooper Jr.'s yak, so much of what we see from Stribling are go routes and hitches. 57% of the routes that he ran at Ole Miss were either deep balls or just simple comebacks. So a big criticism or a big concern with De'Zhaun Stribling based on the Ole Miss tape is how well does he run some of the crossers? How well does he work the intermediate part of the field? Well, just go back 1 year and watch the Oklahoma State tape, and it's completely different. Different offense, different role for De'Zhaun Stribling. He is wearing out the middle of the field. And as I said, prior to that at Washington State, he also led the team in receiving. So the 49ers had a chance to watch all of this. Different offenses, different scenarios, big-time production in each of the settings for De'Zhaun Stribling. And then you look at how they're going to have to deploy him with their own system. And the key for the 49ers is that they've now have Mike Evans at the X receiver position. Separation has been a massive issue for the 49ers over the course of the past 2 seasons. In fact, ever since Brandon Aiyuk went down with his ACL tear in week 7 of the 2024 season, the 49ers have ranked at the bottom of the league in terms of average separation at the time of catch or incompletion. The whole idea that Kyle Shanahan can just get guys open is a myth. It doesn't work that way. Kyle Shanahan, just like any other coach, needs talent to get open. The league is too good to just expect a coach to sit out there and scheme guys consistently into wide open spaces and run an offense. There's a reason why the 49ers dropped down to number 18 in pass game explosiveness last year. And the big part of the reason was that they didn't have receivers, particularly the X, drawing attention to get open. The guy who's going to be, I think, most responsible for getting 49ers players open downfield is Mike Evans, because he plays that X receiver spot with such great force and efficiency. I mean, the size there, the contested catchability, that allows Mike Evans to bring extra defensive attention over toward him. And that opens things up for the Z, the flanker receiver, that's Ricky Pearsall, and the F, that was Jauan Jennings. It is now going to be a mixture of Christian Kirk and De'Zhaun Stribling to begin this 2026 season. Christian Kirk is going to be your smaller slot receiver. De'Zhaun Stribling is the bigger slot receiver. He fits in right with what Jauan Jennings was able to do for the 49ers, except at a much faster clip. 4.3, 640. 153, 10-yard split is solid as well, as is the broad jump. 127 inches, 82nd percentile. But take a quick peek to see where De'Zhaun Stribling scores most poorly on this spider chart. Vertical jump is only 55th percentile. Not bad, 36 inches, but just a little bit above average for receivers. And then a little bit below average for receivers is his arm length. 31 and 5/8 inches. That is just the 42nd percentile. Now, I've got one more good thing to share, but first, the bad based on vertical and arm length corresponds with what we see on tape for De'Zhaun Stribling. His worst skill is his contested catch ability. He's really good at a lot of things. He's really good, I think, at breaking off the line of scrimmage. I think he's good at straight line speed, and he's strong. Obviously, is one of the top blockers in this receiving class. But when it comes to straight up contested catch ability, the arm length and the vertical jump, which aren't great, I think come into play for De'Zhaun Stribling. Here is the overarching good news for the 49ers. This is Mike Evans' spider chart. There are no problems here with arm length. There's no problem here with height or with weight. Evans is an arm length of over 35 inches, which is 98th percentile. He's near 6'5", which is 95th percentile. And as you can see, he's not overly fast. The 40-yard dash coming out for Mike Evans was a 4.5. It's probably even slower now at an advanced age, but he can still jump. The vertical jump is above average, 37 inches, and he's got those really long arms. So Evans can play the X, where you're going to draw more defensive attention, where contested catches are going to be more of a mandatory thing, while De'Zhaun Stribling, with his superior speed, can play one of the other two spots. And because Ricky Pearsall's your prototypical Z, I think De'Zhaun Stribling fits right into third and Jauan's old spot. So we can call it third and De'Zhaun at the big slot position. Now, one thing that I promised to show you that is good on this spider chart for De'Zhaun Stribling is the hand size. 87th percentile, 10-inch hands. He only dropped one pass this past season, a 1.9% drop rate at Ole Miss. So the guy can catch. He's been a vacuum cleaner as far as catches go. It is just those contested catches where things get a little bit more hairy. But that is not even the position that you're asking De'Zhaun Stribling to be in right now. If Mike Evans is on the field, and not to even mention George Kittle and Christian McCaffrey and other guys who can draw coverage, but if Mike Evans is on the field and Ricky Pearsall's on the field, but especially Evans, your hope for that third wide receiver, just like it was for Jauan Jennings, would be that they have some openings downfield, would be that they're not facing the best coverage weapons of opposing defenses, that they get to face some safeties, they get to face some nickel backs, and that's the glory of the big nickel. He's 6'2 plus, and he gets to face some smaller slot cornerbacks, or he gets to face bigger safeties who aren't going to be as fast as him with the 4.36 40. There's a reason why De'Zhaun Stribling was able to lead 3 different college programs in receiving yardage, and there's a reason why the 49ers think that he can fit right in and contribute immediately for them in this 2026 season. Stribling had a relative athletic score of 9.88, which is top of the line. And that's why the 49ers can confidently categorize him with their other draftees. We know that they went for traits in this NFL draft, taking some swings at players who have the traits to potentially break through and be needle movers down the road. If they can get a couple needle movers out of this 8-player draft class, it will be a successful haul. And a 9.88 relative athletic score gives Stribling a chance. Plus, we see him as a football player. He is blocking and he is not dropping passes. You go back to the touchdown that is getting the most fanfare at Ole Miss. It was just a quick little hitch. He caught the football on the far side against Georgia, and this guy just dominated against Georgia. He averaged 92 receiving yards per game in the postseason of the college football playoff this past year, which means he showed up in big moments. But he showed up twice against Georgia, and delivered well over 100 yards. And there was a cornerback who he just roasted all the way to the end zone after a quick hitch. And I looked up that corner. He was at the NFL Combine this year. He ran a 4.38 40. De'Zhaun Stribling ran away from him for that touchdown on the hitch, untouched into the end zone. So we know that he runs a 4.36, but his in-game speed, if you watch a lot of this catch and run, the 7.3 yards after the catch per reception, all very, very impressive for Stribling. It's speed-based, and it's also mentality-based for him. Son of a former Marine, grew up in Hawaii, where he said that, you've got a lot of strength out on the field in Hawaii. So you're tough at a very young age if you're playing tackle football out there. But went to San Diego for a little bit, then moved back to Hawaii, then was recruited out to Washington State. Nick Rolovich was his coach at Washington State, and I'm assuming there was maybe some familiarity there because Rolovich had been Hawaii's head coach prior to joining the Cougars. But son of the longtime Marine, I think his dad was in the Marines for 18 years. You look at somebody like a De'Zhaun Stribling and you see maturity. I mean, the way that he addressed the media when he first showed up at the 49ers facility, I think showed you what he's all about from a leadership perspective, from a put-together perspective, and what he was able to glean from his parents definitely carries over into his football career. The great quote from the scout in Dane Brugler's draft guide was, this guy's the son of a former Marine, and it's very, very clear that even though he's got his Hawaii chill about him, he's got his priorities straight when it comes to working. And that is not nothing when the 49ers are currently dealing with this Brandon Aiyuk situation, right? Aiyuk is almost certainly, and I would say certainly, but you always have to leave a little bit of room for crazy stuff in the NFL, but it almost has certainly taken his last snap with the 49ers. They're trying to find ways to trade him. They don't want to release him for nothing. It has turned into a gigantic headache that now the 49ers have been able to put off on the side, but it might have cost them a chance at a title in 2025 because they did not have an ex-wide receiver, and they had contractually committed money to Brandon Aiyuk. Anyway, they're burned by that situation. So now they have to find a receiver who's going to be reliable for them. And that's why the personality of De'Zhaun Stribling does seem very, very appealing. All in all, I'm so happy we just get to talk about the tape now. I'm so happy that we get to talk about the player now. It is necessary because the consensus discussion is not a very smart discussion. It is subjectivity layered on subjectivity. As Greg Cosell said, only the teams know how their draft boards look. Everything else is amateur outside opinion masquerading as some kind of objective fact. We can much more fairly look at drafts once we are a few years removed from them. So there are great studies that are actually objective, looking back at 49ers and all NFL teams' draft classes. And there's one that ranks the 49ers as the fourth best drafting team since 2017, since Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch took over. This one is fascinating because they haven't been as good since 2021, since the Trey Lance trade. They ranked number 12 out of 32 teams in the measurement, but number 4 since 2017, with the caveat that grades aren't even out yet for 2024 and 2025. Grades will come out at some point. I think for 2024, it's going to be fair to grade those players once this next season happens. So you give them 3 years, and then we'll be able to give the 2025 grades in 2027. For 2024, it's so dependent on Ricky Pearsall and Malik Mustafa's health. If both of those guys are healthy, I think they've proven that they're productive starters, and the 49ers will have 4 starters coming out of that 2024 draft class. Dominic Pooney, Renardo Green already starting. By any objective metric, 4 starters out of a draft class is a good class. 2025, it's much earlier in the process, but between Upton Stout, Micah Williams, Alfred Collins, and CJ West, you can say that the 49ers are already on track to have 4 starters coming out of that draft class. And there is a lot of potential bonus there between Marquise Siegel, Nick Martin, Connor Colby, Jordan Watkins, Curtis Rourke, and Junior Bergen. All those guys are still in the building for San Francisco. We'll see if any of them pan out. And if they do, then it's going to be more than 4 starters from the 2025 draft class. if we want to pivot forward now to 2026 and talk about De'Zhaun Stribling, well, let's look at track record for the 49ers drafting a receiver in the first 2 rounds. It failed in 2018 when Dante Pettis was the selection. But the 49ers course corrected after that. They said, Pettis is too soft. We're going to need to go more physical with our wide receiver additions. So who have they drafted since then at wide receiver in the first 2 rounds? Deebo Samuel, Mr. Physicality himself in 2019. That was a success, obviously. Brandon Aiyuk, that was a success in 2020. What wasn't a success was what happened after he signed his new contract. But the draft in the first round and the rookie deal for Brandon Aiyuk, highly, highly successful as he turned into a top wide receiver in this league. And then Ricky Pearsall in 2024. When Pearsall's been on the field, he's been a top 10 yards per route run guy whenever he's been healthy for the 49ers. The problem has been health, and I think a lot of that can be attributed to bad luck. He did get shot in the chest to begin his NFL career back in 2024. So health is wealth, but if he has it this year, Ricky Pearsall will join Deebo Samuel and Brandon Aiyuk as 2 successful early round 49ers receiver draft picks. If Ricky Pearsall does that this year, well, De'Zhaun Stribling will be able to join that trio not too far from now, but we cannot grade these drafts too early. Football actually has to happen before we can put a grade down. What we can do is talk about strategy. De'Zhaun Stribling has led 3 different colleges in receiving. The first receiver of his kind to do that in this new era. And the 49ers focused on the mature veteran guys coming out of college. It's funny to say that, but in this new era of NIL and transfer portal, the top 3 picks for the 49ers averaged over 24 years of age. Older or the same age as 12 players who had already been on the 49ers roster. But what the 49ers see are guys who have already played for money, who have competed, who have moved teams in college and had to adopt new systems and compete in new spots, yet have come out of that fire stronger. Between Stribling, Romello Height, who played at 5 different colleges, the 49ers' next pick, and then Kalen Black, who followed Kurt Signetti from James Madison to Indiana and then led the national champions, the 16-0 national champions in rushing touchdowns. The 49ers have 3 weathered veterans whom they've drafted, older guys who they'll have under contractual control, rookie deal through their prime years. And De'Zhaun Stribling leads that effort. They think he could plug in immediately, take that spot of Jauan Jennings, and probably even elevate the ceiling of it since he runs a 4.36 40.